Case will now come to order. Roll call. Meek.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Peterson here. Ray.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Weiniger.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right into number 4, if Ronnie, if you will get the first interviewee. Yeah. And while we're waiting for the interviewee, applications to fill a vacant Board of Education Director position for District C were accepted during the period beginning June 7th, 2023 at 8 a.m. and closing on June 19th, 2023 at noon. Initial interviews of the applicants who have been selected for the initial interviews with the district's board will be conducted in 3 phases. These instructions were given to all candidates earlier. The applicant will have an opening statement of approximately 2 minutes. Questions from each member of the district's board, 1 question per director. Each candidate will be asked the same question with approximately 2 minutes to respond, and then an applicant closing statement of approximately 2 minutes. We'll now start bringing the interviewees in one by one. We will have a total of 7 interviewees listed by last name alphabetical order. Good afternoon. Mr. Burmeister, before we get started, any questions on the flow here? Opening statement, 1 question from each director, about 2 minutes apiece, and then closing statement? Okay, and we're going to make sure we can hear you.
Awesome. So I got audio issues now too. Perfect.
Oh, no.
I'll start jiggling the wires if you guys want to go ahead and start the interviews, and hopefully we can hear the candidate loud enough. I'll try and.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead with your opening statement. Thank you.
Well, first of all, hello everyone. I'm Michael Burmeister. Thank you for this opportunity to volunteer.
That one's working, yep.
Okay. How about now?
Great.
Okay, good. If I'm selected for this, I think I can bring the same level of dedication and duty that I brought to my previous military career and my other endeavors in my life. I'm seeing this as an opportunity to give to the community in which I'm a resident. My family and I have lived here for a couple of years. Someone had said in the application process that they want people with skin in the game, and I think I do. Though my son has graduated, I have daughters in both elementary school and the middle school in my area. I've got an interest in keeping Highlands Ranch and the county as the place to come to do business and to live. I think the focus that we need to have here is on the kids, making sure they get a proper education, and on taking care of our teachers and staff. Without the teachers and staff, we don't have good education for the kids, and then we're failing our kids as well. I think I have the ability to accomplish this mission, if you'll allow me to use a military term. I have the time to dedicate to it. I'm retired military now. I occasionally right now substitute at the 2 elementary schools near my home, but that's just to help out when they've got problems. I'm used in my career to evaluating evidence and making decisions and then taking action. That said, I'm not just military-centric. I've been a member of a board of directors before. I was twice elected as president with 2 successful terms. I believe in institutional transparency. I understand the difference, though, with proprietary information, personal information, stuff that has to be kept secret for reasons. I formerly held a top secret security clearance for 30 years in the Army, so I understand the balance and the interplay that goes with that. I also understand that the Public Records Act is the big elephant in the room. Hopefully, we can move beyond that now and we can focus on the kids and the teachers and take care of what needs to be done. I also understand that this is a temporary assignment. I'm just here until I'm replaced in the normal course of events in November. And that's absolutely fine. I just want to help out. Now, the most important part is, what are your questions for me?
Okay, and with that nice transition and for giving his Army service as a member of the Navy, we'll go with Director Meek.
Sure, Mr. Burmeister, thank you so much for your interest in serving on the board. So my question for you is, what does excellence in board governance mean to you? And how would your addition to our governance team advance our work?
Sorry.
Sorry. Oh, it is working now.
Yes.
Perfect.
Excellence in government, I think you have to have a vision for where you want to go. I think you need to coordinate with everyone who has a piece of that pie to make sure that you can integrate everyone. When we were with the Army, we worked with the Navy and the Air Force too, and I actually grew up on a Navy base. Making sure that everyone has a piece, has the input so that you can do all that coordination up front. It's no good to make a plan and not tell anybody and then have one raise a hand and says, you need me to support this plan, but I can't because I don't have the physical ability. So you've got to coordinate with people ahead of time. In the military, we like to say, mission first, people always. So in addition to kids, we need to make sure we take care of our teachers and our staff. I'm not exactly sure what or if there is a role here in this, but I know that our teachers in our county are not the best paid in the state, and my personal opinion is that we need to find a way to remedy that and take care of them, because if you don't have the good teachers, you're not going to give the kids what they need. Okay.
Director Myers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Burmeister, what do you feel are the top needs of the Douglas County School District?
Coming from a family that included a lot of engineers, I think there are some basic skills that I think all the students need to have, and that's the usual STEM type activities. In addition, I think they have to have the ability to communicate in writing and verbally. I've known several people that are just absolute geniuses, but they can't explain their way out of a paper bag. And I mean, they're really great people, but we need to teach our students the skills that they need to succeed in life, and that's what we need to look at.
Thank you. Next is myself. The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential, end quote. What do you think the board and district are doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
Doing right, I would have to say, from what I have observed in my time as a substitute teacher, the people that work with students with disabilities are really some phenomenal people. And they're trying to get the kids to feel included and learn something regardless of their abilities. So I think we are really fortunate in having some phenomenal people working for the district. I would be hard pressed to say things that we're doing wrong. Sometimes I know people have differences of opinion, but we need to remain civil because we don't want to have those kinds of arguments detract from our primary focus, which should be the schools themselves, the students and the teachers.
Thank you, sir. Director Ray?
Good afternoon, Mr. Burmeister.
Oh.
Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or attended What were the topics you felt strongly about? And based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making processes?
I'm afraid the only one that I've taken a look at was one when it was the big elephant in the room, arguing about one of two things, either the Public Meetings Act or things on the, I'm not sure I'm going to use the proper term here, but the idea of trying to have a broad-based inclusion of all students of all types, and whether or not we should limit certain access to things. The thing that concerned me the most there was heated emotions appeared to be overtaking sometimes the substantive debate. And I think if I would have been president, I would have asked for a recess or a cooling period for a few minutes, all take a deep breath, because in the end, we all have the same goals in mind. And if we can approach those goals, taking care of the kids and the teachers in the system, from the viewpoint that we are all people here in the room, we're all adults, take a deep breath and then let's start over. Because getting hyper emotionally involved is not going to do any of us any good, either in our relationships with each other, because face it, at the end of the day, we still have to work with each other. So that probably would have been something that I would have done.
Thank you.
Director Williams.
Hello, thank you for being here today. So I have more of like a specific question.
Sure.
So tell me a time that you did have to work with people of different opinions and what you did to help bring them together.
Let's see. People of different opinions. As far as a minor disagreement, I'd have to say it's one time I was the president of the board of directors of my church at the time in Virginia. We had two large, very different schools of thought about what we were looking for in a new pastor, because we had lost, unfortunately, our current pastor and we had to find a new one. And some of that got heated. What I did, I tried to make sure that everyone got a chance to talk, got their opinions out, and then together I tried to get them to explore alternatives or other ways of looking at things, or what other things we might do, maybe some out-of-the-box thinking. That's probably the best example I can give you for what you're looking for. Okay.
Director Weininger.
So we've had some discussions about putting some funding initiatives on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts around another MLO and bond being on the ballot again?
I think the problem that you're running into is people hear that and they think more taxes. The key here, because we definitely need the money to give our teachers more pay. And there are things that the school district just needs, and it's going to take money. That's the bottom line. I think what we need to do is communicate early and often with the community and make sure that they understand that this is not just a tax or an extra tax on people that don't have kids. This is something that we are all contributing, because the education of these children is going to affect the future of our communities here, the kids who live and work here after they graduate. And for those that move on, it's going to contribute to the betterment of our society. And if we don't ensure that we have the best teachers and the best education for our kids, then that's going to mean that our kids are going to have less influence on our society. And if we want to have that kind of influence, we have got to get them educated and give them the opportunities to go out there and excel. So communication, 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 early and often would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. And you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Okay, well, I won't take that long. Unfortunately, we don't have really a very long time for you to get to know me or any of the candidates. I would encourage you, if you have any questions about my performance locally, go ahead and talk to the schools where I substitute. That's Redstone Elementary and Wildcat Mountain Elementary. Regardless, though, whether I'm selected or not, I hope you folks, and I wish you the best of luck, because we really need good folks on this board. And with that, thank you, and I'll get out of your hair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burmeister.
Do I just sit here in the back?
You absolutely may. Afternoon, Mr. DiCarlo.
Afternoon.
Just as a recap, 2 minutes opening statement. You'll have one question from each of the member of the board of directors, about 2 minutes to respond. You'll get the same questions as every other candidate has gotten to keep it fair, and then about 2 minutes for a closing statement. Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, and you may start when ready.
Okay. So I'm applying for the director vacancy, mostly because I do have a passion for education and I have experience in it. Now, I'm talking as a parent, for certain, sure, but also with the various sort of little committees and whatnot that the board has. I've been heavily involved since 2009. I got involved because at that time, there were budget shortfalls that ended up taking transportation away. And it was a hardship at that time. I organized parents in our community, and we won that transportation back. Since that time, I've been involved in funding, both locally and at the Capitol, dealing with that funding formula, trying to untangle things. And I've worked with a number of past and current legislatures, most of which are endorsing me and the campaign that I have. I've served on the District Accountability Committee, first as a parent member and then twice elected as the chairman of that body, as we provided the guidance to get through it was the Act of 2009 that changed what that body did in a very short period of time with not a whole lot of skeleton for it. I strongly believe that the district can and should do a better job in one specific area, and that's identifying kids that are not responding to a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to individualize. We have to figure out how to reach those folks. Public education, obviously, nothing can be all things to all people, but we can be more things to more kids if we put our mind to it. So whether a student's struggling in reading, or they're on spectrum, or they got dyslexia, or any other kind of problem, we've got to, even if they're light years ahead, we've got to figure out how to reach them and make that environment work for that individual. We should be preparing kids not just for college, but if it's trade school or direct to work. Our remediation rates need work, and they always have been. It's been a long time. They haven't made a lot of change. So I would like the opportunity to serve on the committee. I bring just a very diverse background. 3 of my kids have been through this district. They're all done now. but 3 of them have been through it. So I understand from a parent's point of view. I also understand from serving on the various boards and being involved in the sometimes insane world of the public at large with regard to the district.
Okay, thank you, and we'll start with Director Meek.
Mr. DiCarlo, thanks for being here today. So tell me, what does excellence in board governance mean to you? And your addition to this governance team, how would you advance our work?
Okay, so can they hear? Can you guys? I've only got one ear, so apologize. When you're talking about excellence as far as the district itself, to me, reaching every kid, getting to every child, finding a path to that kid and making sure that we're giving them everything they can to be ready, whether it's college, trade school, or direct to career. Board governance, there's a duty to work together and to have conversations and disagreements, obviously, and probably sometimes pretty serious philosophical disagreements. I think one of the things I've learned and that I would bring to this board, because I have been a member of some very disagreeable disagreements over the years, I don't have space for that anymore. We can disagree or agree, shake hands, and still continue forward, because that's the job. The job still has to be done, and we still have to find the best way to do it. Excellence in leadership means finding a way to get it done and having conversations even when they're hard or sometimes impossible.
Director Myers.
Good afternoon. Mr. DiCarlo, what do you feel are the top needs of our Douglas County School District?
Top needs. We've got challenges with pockets and areas that have fewer students than we would like and areas that maybe have more. We've got a challenge to balance that out. And how do you do it without negatively impacting the learning experience or putting undue strain on the family? That's one of the bigger challenges I see. I know we also have, and the board and the district's been addressing it, but literacy issues. And that's a big one. Kids have to be able to read if they're going to do anything, if they're going to excel in science, if they're going to excel in math, if they're going to find out they have a love of history. They've got to be able to read and process. Literacy is huge to me, and I say that because I've been through those challenges and I've seen firsthand what it does to a student's self-esteem and their ability to excel. It is a pullback on the rein, and it's something that's also embarrassing. We need to work at making it not embarrassing and something we can challenge, we can tackle, take the challenge out of.
The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential, end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
So what we're doing right is acknowledging some of those challenges. Number one, like I just said, literacy. I know you guys have undertaken that and take it very seriously. Our remediation rates are not something we're doing right, and it's difficult because we only get that information from in-state universities, and you can make some projections about what's happening in out-of-state universities or not, but we're not sending those kids out college ready. So if we're not sending them out college ready, we're probably not sending them out 100% workforce ready for those that go right into work. And we're probably not sending them out 100% ready for trade schools. And we're also shifting a burden after they're done with high school back onto the family to figure out, because they're going to have to pay for that remediation out of pocket. That can't continue. We need to improve that number. We need to dig in and find out what's the root cause of it. I have a feeling in part it is probably literacy, and so great, we're addressing that. We probably need to double down on that.
Thank you. Director Ray.
Good afternoon, Mr. DiCarlo. Discuss a board meeting that you viewed or attended. What were topics you felt strongly about? And based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
I remember one, and I'm going to say it was 2011. I might be wrong on that. Maybe it was 12. But there was a meeting, and it was about whether or not to place a tax increase on the ballot for a pay-for-performance system. And it was very contentious, and it was, I mean, there were a lot of emotions. There was a lot of angst. It was an unknown. You have angst on one end because, okay, this is how I'm paid, and angst on another because, hey, this is my mortgage. And so there was absolutely a path already cut and carved. And I think that that meeting showed that everything was happening a little too soon and a little too early. That there hadn't been proper or enough discussion or presentation on what does this mean both ways. Because of that, ultimately, this didn't work. And it had nothing to do with that tax failing that year. It had to do more with implementation of what finally was put in place. And it sort of rolled from what happened in that meeting. Sometimes it doesn't take the industry of a board member, meaning the words and the speaking, it takes the listening and the processing, and then the speaking comes after the fact. And I've been at many meetings where those two things are out of balance, and seen many meetings, I've watched them as well, where those two things are out of balance.
Thanks.
Director Williams.
Hi, thanks for being here. So earlier you were talking about disagreements that you have been a part of throughout your times on different boards and committees. So I'm going to be a little bit more specific. If you could give me a specific time where you have had to deal with people who have had differing opinions, and what did you do?
Sure. As chairman of the Accountability Committee, there was confusion after that 2009 act that changed what the DAC did and what it meant. And there was frustration from the community. Why? Because certain members of the community, portion of the community, wasn't feeling heard by the board, and they viewed the DAC as what it had been in the past, which was sort of an alternate, flex the citizens' voice towards the board. That act in 2009 got away from that. It changed it. We were now there to hold the district basically accountable to board policy. And it took a while to get people to, number one, understand that change, and number two, to create what needed to be put in place to do these things. We were taxed by the board with many different projects and challenges, but this kept coming back up. And to be honest, it finally came to a head. I mean, it was a very contentious, intense, and not very fun meeting from either side to be a part of. I also look at that and say that was necessary. You had to clear the air on it. And sometimes, sometimes you clean the carburetor and it makes a cloud of dust, but everything is better afterwards. It did get smoother after that, and the DAC was able to get on with the business as of 2009, what it was supposed to be, instead of being pulled back into what it was supposed to be before that. So contention, sometimes if managed correctly, can be your friend. You're very welcome.
Director Weiniger.
All right, as a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts on an MLO and bond being on the ballot this year?
So the first thing I would say is I absolutely recognize that is how school districts have a budget. You have to be able to ask the citizens for investment from time to time. That said, taxes are going up 53% this year. You put it on the ballot last year and it failed. 50% plus of the public said no. The chances it will fail this year are very high. You don't need 2 years of loss in a row. I would not be supportive of putting a tax up. 53% is a lot to ask of our seniors. It's a lot to ask of families. I go to the grocery store, I look at the price of beef, and head right to the pork. And we're not alone in that. It is an expensive time. And it's difficult because you have no control over your revenue stream. And you're at the mercy of the funding formula, which is lopsided and broken and wrong, and I get all that. Unfortunately, it is what it is because you're going to price people out of their homes. Our seniors are panicking. Speak to our county treasurer about that and he'll tell you directly. It's not a fun time to be on a fixed income. And while the need may be real, I think what we need to do is re-examine, reprioritize, go through the budget again, and sometimes cuts are necessary. And you would hope not, but sometimes they're necessary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DiCarlo, and now you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
So first, I want to thank everyone for the questions and the opportunity to interview. It's a great way to spend the afternoon, especially since the internet's out at home. So I know each of you, probably, we would have areas of agreement and disagreement. And I think that's good. I think that's balanced. I think that people who process and have the intellectual capacity should never completely agree. That said, I think agreement in this year, if I'm counting right from last year, and maybe I'm making an assumption, there would be 6 votes to put this tax forward, which means roughly about 50% of this community isn't having their voice heard on that issue on this board. I think disagreement is a good thing. I think sometimes it makes us look in other areas to be innovative and creative, a diverse approach. That's what I would bring. What I can tell you is, if I was selected to fill this vacancy, we will not always agree. You will always know where I stand, and so will the public. I don't mince words, and I don't pretend to believe one thing and do another. I am what I am. So with that, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and you guys have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. DiCarlo. And you're welcome to stay here or leave as you see fit. Okay, still in the afternoon. Welcome, Mr. Geiger. As with all candidates, about 2 minutes for an opening statement. You'll get a question from each member of the board, roughly 2 minutes to answer. You'll get the same questions as every other candidate, and then you'll have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Any questions?
Seems pretty clear.
Okay, great. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for having me here today. It's a little interesting to interview in front of people I've been in front of so many times. 20 years ago, my family moved to Douglas County in large part because of the schools. We knew not just that our kids would get a good education, but it would provide a stable community, stable housing, good jobs. 9 years ago, because I thought that progress was necessary, I started working with the Long Range Planning Committee. That's been an education in and of itself. I've had a chance as chair of that committee and then later as a member of the Mill Bond Committee to work with 3 different superintendents, one twice, 3 different board presidents. I've got to meet with school principals and students and staff members. And it's been an incredible experience to get to know how this district works. I've been to the school board meetings. I've stayed here and watched policy be made in various ways by various incarnations of this board. And I've stayed here long after the public commenters have left. I think what I bring to this is 2 things. One, I know how this works. I know how this district works in a way that you can only get by long-term volunteering unless you sit on that dais. This board is going to make important decisions between now and November. Decisions that will impact the school district for years to come. You're going to have to decide about competitive compensation for our teachers and our staff. You're going to have to decide about how we're going to meet the capital needs of our aging buildings, what we're going to do about growing districts, and what we're going to do about schools that are under-enrolled. Even tonight, you're addressing policies that will affect every kid in this district. You need somebody who can come in and sit down and have an intelligent, informed discussion about that, and help contribute. Finally, I've been a lawyer for 34 years, and despite some reputations, one of the things I do is settle cases. I deal with people, particularly in divorce, who are emotional and angry and have conflicting issues. And my job is to bring them together to resolve them in most of the cases because that's what's best for kids. And so I think I bring that as well. I think that professional experience, both as a lawyer and as a conflict resolution, will help the board to move forward.
Thank you. Director Meek?
Mr. Geiger, thank you for being here today. So my question is, what does excellence in board governance mean to you? And how would your addition to this governance team advance our work?
I do believe in policy-based governance, which means that the policies have to be well considered, well discussed. They have to represent the values of the district. They have to be extraordinarily clear to give appropriate direction to the superintendent and the staff. They have to be talked about and discussed in clear ways. They have to represent a vision of the future, not just the current issues that may show up on radio or cable news. They have to reflect how we want the district to operate long-term. They have to be designed to last. And I think that's the most important thing. There is a danger of acting in the heat of the moment. And I think we have to, as a policy governance board, make policies that are here to help not just the students today, but the students in the future, but to have enough flexibility that when the issues change, how we address those policies can also change.
Director Myers?
Hi, Mr. Geiger. How you doing?
It's good to see you.
Good. What do you feel are the top needs of our Douglas County School District?
Competitive compensation. And that is part of, but not all of, respect for the people who work for and administer our schools. We have to get into a situation where we tell them we respect you and your expertise. We're going to pay you fairly, but we're also going to treat you well. Personally, for District C in particular, we need to address the under-enrolled schools. We need to have a fair, we need to have an open, we have to have a discussion about how that's going to work so that people don't get surprised. I think we should go to other districts and learn how not to do it. I think that funding for schools in areas that are growing too quickly has to be done. We have to evaluate what a neighborhood school means. Not convinced that shipping kids from Sterling Ranch to Coyote Creek is a neighborhood school. We may have to do it. You'll decide that today about what we're going to do. So I would say those are the main issues. Obviously, we've had other issues about equity policy. I think that now that that equity policy has been voted on and settled, I think helping the superintendent formulate the policies to enforce that are vital. People in our schools, everybody in our schools has to feel safe. Longer term, part of respecting teachers is the fact that it's going to get harder. We are going to face a teacher shortage. That is a nationwide problem. And we're going to have to be creative and intelligent and create a Douglas County solution so we can recruit good teachers, hire good teachers, and keep good teachers and other staff. Our diesel mechanics are everybody is important. And if we can't have somebody fixing the buses, it doesn't matter if we can't get kids to school. So those are complicated issues, and those are not between now and November, but they can start being addressed now, as you all have.
The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, "to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential," end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
When you all retire at whatever age you do, your name should be on the Legacy campus. Because the commitment to CTE there is something to be deeply proud of. We are, in a way that was not true when I joined the LRPC 9 years ago, addressing that college is not the right choice for every one of our students. That we need to provide some people with the ability to come out of school and work and do what they want to do. We have to make sure that every kid is able to express their needs, to evaluate their needs, to meet with their people that they trust and know, and get those needs met. That's partially about later education. That's partially just about walking down the hallway. And this is what I need, and this is how I feel safe. We have to have people who listen. In extreme cases where we have to impose discipline, it has to be fair, it has to be appropriate, and it has to be quick. Kids who don't feel safe or don't feel welcomed aren't going to learn as well as we should. So I think there is room, I think there is always room for improvement in that area. I think we can continue to work on career and technical education. I think we can continue to work on different areas of college, different ways to proceed. Harvard is great for some kids. Mines is great for some kids. Arapahoe Community College is better for others. And I think we have to be very good, and I think we have to be better at providing those opportunities.
Director Ray.
Mr. Geiger, good afternoon.
Good to see you, sir.
You as well. Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or attended. What were the topics you felt strongly about, and based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
Oh, my. As you know, I was here watching you until after 1 o'clock when the equity policy and other policies were discussed. Policy modification, particularly when words like equity, I think, have been taken out of context, are challenging. And it's hard when people have legitimate, honest discussions and disagreements about what's right and what's wrong. And that was a right-wrong discussion. Let's be honest about that. What do I think I could have done? I think I could have helped some. I thought the wordsmithing in the end was important. I think the discussions there were important, and I would have liked to have been part of that. That night, I made the mistake of having my public comment read by somebody else, and it was misunderstood, and I apologize for that. I think there are times that as a lawyer, I read things differently. I think I read them in a way that can help you understand that. That meeting was a lot. The public comment was a lot. People were attacked in ways that were inappropriate. One of the things I bring is I get yelled at all the time. And so I have as thick a skin as probably is necessary. It's different when it's about you. But I think I can bring, I think I'm good at keeping my head when those things happen, and I think that's something I can help with. Not to say you did not, but I think that's a value I bring to the board, is the ability to process. The poem actually says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes public comment will tell me I'm wrong, and sometimes I should listen to that. So I think having been told repeatedly I'm wrong, I've learned how to accept that without getting defensive.
Thank you.
Director Williams.
Hello there.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Excited to be here.
So I'm going to ask for a specific. I would like you to give me a specific time that you have had to deal with people who have had differing opinions, and I know you've had plenty of it, so, and how you dealt with it.
School district-wide, the Mill Bond Exploratory Committee. Sandra made a conscious choice to expand the variety this year. And dealing with older men from the business community who didn't understand who didn't have my background in the district and didn't have my bias about the district was interesting. We had some really interesting discussions. Things that gave me a different viewpoint about how to do that. One of the ways I tried to deal with conflict, and you'll be shocked about this, is that sometimes I shut up. And there were meetings there where I had very clear opinions, but I made kind of a conscious decision to stop and not talk and not try to tell them what I thought I knew, and I learned a lot more that day from those people. That's a truth. I get paid to talk all day. When I've worked on the LRPC, when I've worked on the Mill Bond, I've learned more when I've listened.
Director Weininger.
It was easy to tell who was coming next.
Brad, as a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November, as you know, being on MBEC. What are your thoughts on having an MLO and bond being on the ballot this year?
I wish our timing was better. I got my property tax assessment like everybody else. And that's scary. And, I understand the numbers. I just don't see how we can continue to be not competitive on our pace. I go and look at those. I look at Cherry Creek paying $10,000 a year for more than we do for a teacher. Westminster in the newspaper bragging about how much they're paying new teachers. It's become a race, and I don't love that, but I don't think we can ignore it either. So I think, and importantly, we have to reinvest more in security. I know other school districts have concerns about SROs. There is a danger of mission creep, but our district wants better security, and that has to come with money. So I don't see how how it's not appropriate to put an MLO on. I'm going to advocate for that. As to the bond issues, again, the needs in our older schools are so clear. I just can't keep sending kids to schools where the climate control doesn't work. The new builds are more complicated. They're so expensive, and they're going to get more expensive. That's a political discussion about, is now the time that we ask for $300 million to build new schools? If we don't, we're not building them for 5 years. So I think there are complicated issues, particularly about that point. But I am, and I'm going to be very clear about this, I'm in favor of putting some funding on the ballot in '23.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geiger. Now your closing statement, closing argument, statement, yeah.
You do not want a closing argument from me. Douglas County is providing an excellent education for the vast majority of our kids. And it is addressing other issues to make it even better. Obviously, the goal is to make it a safe, welcoming education environment for everyone, and we need to continue to work on that. Our policies from the board do that. Our decisions about funding do that, about who we care about and who we value. Yes, the board is a policy-making group. We need stability in policies. We need stability in administration. We need a board that not just works together, but is perceived to be working together. We need to be on Kyle Clark's Twitter less often. And that, to me, is best accomplished by everybody putting their head down and addressing the Douglas County issues, to find Douglas County strengths, to create Douglas County solutions. And I think they're out there. And I think that people working together on this dais and in the school district and in the board committees can help find those. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geiger, and you're welcome to either depart or remain in the boardroom as you see fit.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, good afternoon.
Thank you. Like all other candidates, 2-minute opening statement. You'll get a question from each member of the board, roughly 2 minutes to answer. You'll get the exact same questions that all the other interviewees have had, and then 2 minutes for a closing statement. Any questions before we start?
No questions.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jason Howard. I'm here today to give you guys some help and motivation in continuing the good work of this board. I have supported this board on the sidelines since its change and since its decisions post-pandemic, I'll say. As a father of 2 children, I saw how we handled that. I was not impressed I understand there's difficult decisions and what have you, but also in my legal and career experience, I could tell that we were making the wrong choices. Even the executives, how they handled the parents and how they communicated with them at the parent meetings, especially over the masking, was just, it was really poorly done. Literally pissed everybody off. So that's where I stand. I wanted to start with that in the opening statement. I'm a bit of a, mystery figure. You guys don't know me, but that's where I'm coming from. I would just fill in to help you continue along the path you've been going. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Director Meek?
Hi, Mr. Howard. Thanks for being here today and for your interest. So my question for you is, what does excellence in board governance mean to you? And how would your addition to this governance team help further that?
Excellence in board administration. Well, you want to make informed decisions, but you also want to lead with the community input towards a mission and goals to create a vision for the district and all the schools involved for the kids in their education. So it's helping you all with research, information, decision-making. I'd like to help with any kind of communications. I feel like you've been a bit hamstrung in that area with court cases and whatnot, and that's just not fair. It's not appropriate. We need to get the word out that we're doing good work, and this is the way we need to keep moving forward. And that would be board excellence. You gotta be cooperative and collaborative. Keep all interested sides engaged. Identify everybody's interests. Identify the shared interests and build a coalition around those in order to make decisions and implement the vision for the board. That's what we need to do.
Director Myers?
Good afternoon, Mr. Howard. So what are your top needs of the Douglas County School District? What do you think our top needs are?
For me, this is a fill-in position, so I'm going to fill in to help you guys. But I view your vision as safety. We need to keep our kids safe and secure. It's huge. It costs a lot of money. We aren't doing it as a nation, much less as a district, to the extent we need to, and we need to get more funding for that. And I support that and would organize around that. And then I would say after that, it would be making sure, I don't think we've done enough to make sure that what happened during the pandemic will not reoccur. I think there needs to be guidance and resolution on what went wrong and what we would do different next time. But, that would be my own idea. I don't know if y'all would support that or what that would look like. But that's something I think history has certainly looked kindly upon those who didn't support that. And I think it would be good, if nothing else, to issue a resolution that that was the wrong decision.
Thank you. The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, "to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential," end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
I believe you have to keep all children's interests at heart, but you cannot pick sides. You cannot allow different topics and policies to be misused or abused to create activism in the classroom or at the board. My goal is not to come in and create narratives or conflict. My goal is to resolve conflict, solve problems, and help move the vision forward for each student and collectively. But Douglas County has its own unique community, and we should have the power and the freedom to support our children and run our schools as parents deem is appropriate and wise and reasonable, within the law, of course.
Thank you. Director Wray?
Mr. Howard, good afternoon. Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or attended. What were the topics you felt strongly about, And based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
Thank you. Well, again, this is a unique role. You guys are selecting your co-board members, which is quite unique, so I recognize that, which is why I started with what I would come in, and you guys could decide up or down on that. Recent board meetings, once I decided I would apply for this position, I looked at a bunch. You guys have all been through the ringer. I see it in your faces. I've seen the various conflicts. My heart goes out to each and every one of you for your effort and diligence and your time spent on this board, and just the heartbreak, attending a board meeting while you're in the hospital bed, that's just incredible. I'll never forget that. So really, I want to come in and help support each and every one of you, even in the areas where there's conflict, but mostly to forward progress on areas of shared agreement. I mean, it is an educational context and goal. We should have many, many areas of agreement. Where there's conflict, we try to resolve it. To the extent you can, you take strategic positions about whether to forward that, spend your time on that or not. So my goal would be to foster a collaborative environment through interpersonal communications and problem solving, help identify interests, and do any research and inform decisions around those interests. That would be my role.
Director Williams?
Hi, thanks for being here. My question is a little bit, I'm looking for a specific time in which you dealt with people who had differing opinions and how you dealt with that.
Thank you. My job is in the United States federal government. We, in one sense, have a chain of command that you might be familiar with in the military, what have you. So a lot of the executive or operational is just enforcement and implementation. There can be lots of disagreements in that regard. Most of it's policy generated. What are we going to do around different employee or personnel issues, or even how to spend money and things like that? Again, how we resolve those differences is we identify the interests, and that helps clarify what are the priority interests, and that helps convince minds. It helps avoid confrontational language or just antagonizing the matter with interpersonal dispute. And then you try to build or foster an agreement around those shared interests and build support around it to actually hopefully get it implemented.
Director Weiniger?
Jason, as a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts on an MLO and bond being on the ballot this year?
Thank you. I struggled with this one for the most because I thought, well, you guys shouldn't be required to vote for somebody based on whether they're support funding or not. Obviously, I support more funding. Obviously, I support more funding for my children and all the facilities available to them and all the highest world-class educators we can find as a practical matter. I think, though, the prior effort, I would like to try to improve that effort if we were to do it again. I'd like to focus on security and safety. I would like to focus on being more transparent and help communicate to the voters why, this is good for everybody. This has no downside. And there's some questions that need to be answered in that regard that I had myself, such as, if we increase local funding, what does that do to the state funding? And then with the property assessment and inflation, it's a terrible time to seek more money, but we need it. We need to be able to communicate that. And I'd like to lead with security, additional funding for retaining and acquiring world-class educators as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You now have 2 minutes for closing comments.
Well, thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all your efforts. I really do appreciate it. Even if I'm not the selectee, you're all doing a bang-up job, and I really support you. And good luck with your search. All right.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Howard, and you're welcome to either leave or sit in the boardroom as you see fit. Thank you. Hi, ma'am, how are you? And can you state your last name just so we don't get it wrong?
Sure, it's Lineberry.
Lineberry, thank you very much. Well, welcome, Ms. Lineberry. Good afternoon. You'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement. You'll get a question from each director, roughly 2 minutes to answer. You'll get the same questions that every other candidate is being asked, and then you'll have 2 minutes for closing comments. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead with your opening statement.
My name is Lindsay Lineberry, and I am and have been a Douglas County resident for the last 12 years. I own a small business in Highlands Ranch, and I'm the mother of 2 children in Douglas County schools who will be in kindergarten and 2nd grade this fall. I care deeply about my children and the well-being of all students in our county schools. When we moved here 12 years ago, our realtor raved about this school district, how amazing and strong it was, how it ranked nationally, and more, which was a high selling point to a young couple wanting to find a house where they could raise a family. Sorry. I recently had a conversation with a neighbor who moved in a couple years ago from out of state, and their experience was very opposite. Instead of hearing all of the positive attributes our schools have to offer, they were told to avoid Douglas County. I want to help change that in this vacancy, to help preserve the quality and improve our school system, and this is why I want to be involved. I want to see Douglas County schools thrive, and I want our students, schools, teachers, staff, and school board to be strong together for the well-being of everyone involved, but especially for the well-being of our children's education. I believe strong schools have a chain effect on strong communities, and strong communities have thriving businesses, families, and people who come together to work towards shared causes and want what is best to continue to prosper. When it comes to our schools, teachers and families deserve to be heard, and having a voice when it comes to matters involving our children is important. I find it to be very important that the next board member in this vacancy and when they're in November voted on, help ensure all voices are heard and solutions are reached through collaboration. As a mom, I love being hands-on and involved in our schools. I work with the kids, teachers, staff, and it fuels my passion to want to be involved as well. I have been a room mom for the past 2 years. I attend events, and I have helped with several events as well. Before owning my own business, I also taught cooking classes for an after-school program where I taught in Parker, Highlands Ranch, and Castle Rock. Being able to be in the schools and communicate with teachers and staff is important to me as a mother and would benefit someone on the board. Although I do not have experience working on a school board or a strong educational system background, I do believe I would be able to provide an outsider's point of view on existing issues as a parent and would be a board member a lot of people can relate to. When it comes to this vacancy position, I have a non-biased opinion and would be a fresh-minded individual that thinks things through and can support, give constructive criticism when needed, and provide alternative solutions in tough situations where there could be other choices to help find reconciliation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lineberry. Director Meek.
Hi, Ms. Lineberry. Thank you for being here today and for your interest in this position. So what does excellence in board governance mean to you, and how would your addition to our governance team advance our work?
I think excellence, being able to look at both sides of the picture, hear both sides of the issue, and being able to have constructive conversations, and being able to respect each other's point of view.
Director Myers.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lineberry. I'm wondering, what do you think are the top needs of the Douglas County School District?
I think that we need to get back to educating our children and putting the politics aside. I know that that's a very hard statement because unfortunately politics have come into the school board a lot. I think that it's important to put our kids first and their education and the happiness of the schools and teachers. Sorry. Thanks.
The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, "to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential," end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
So I can only speak from my experience, and I have young kids in Douglas County. As a mom, I am very content with my school and how they have excelled in helping my children with where their learning levels are. And I think that's something that we do great at with testing for advancement or helping with IEPs. And I think that that is something that Douglas County does wonderful at, and they have a lot of support and the employees that do take care of that. As a school board, I think being able to hear the families and teachers, I feel like, I think listening better and hearing the needs and the wants of the families in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Ray?
Mr. Lineberry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or attended. What were the topics you felt strongly about? And based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
So I have to be honest, I don't watch a lot of the board meetings, and the only time I did was when I was worried if my kids were going to go back to school or back in-person learning. Unfortunately, that was not a fun time to be watching board meetings, and it made me sad, honestly, that the people that my kids are looking up to as examples of a board district and the community in itself, the way communication was handled, I feel like that I was sad to watch that. I do think that I personally, being at that meeting probably wouldn't have been beneficial, but I think that I am a good communicator and that I can see both sides and I have empathy and compassion for both sides. And so it's hard to say how I could have changed that, the last board meeting I watched, but.
Thanks.
Director Williams?
Hi, thanks so much for being here. So my question, I'm looking for a specific time in which you have dealt with people who have had differing opinions, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I'm a business owner, and I am a business owner with a co-owner, and it's just us two. And so we all the time have differing thoughts, and we sit down and we talk about points of each thought, and we together compromise and collaborate and move forward.
Director Weininger?
Thanks for being here today. As a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts on an MLO and bond being put on the ballot again this year?
I think that should go on the ballot. I think having that money for Douglas County is beneficial, and I would be in support of that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lambert. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
In closing, I would like to thank you all for your time and consideration. Being a local business owner and active community member, I feel I am qualified for this position because I value hard work, I am fiscally responsible, I work hard to build lasting relationships with clients as well as local schools, nonprofit organizations, and local businesses. I am known for looking and thinking outside of the box in situations that need a fresh set of eyes. When issues arise, I work well under pressure with thinking quickly and openly to provide solutions, and I am detail-oriented in doing so. As a mother, I possess skills such as empathy and compassion, listening skills, problem-solving skills, and the emotional intelligence to have tough conversations in a manner that allows all voices to be heard and to help collaborate on positive solutions and outcomes. I do feel that I would be a valuable member of the board if chosen for this vacancy, as I am able to relate to issues that arise as a parent, but I also can and will relate to the people in the community who want to work together to be stronger for our kids and schools' futures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lineberry. You're welcome to either depart or join our audience as you desire. Good afternoon, Mr. Page. You can have a seat there. Just like all the other interviewees, it'll be 2 minutes for an opening statement. You'll get a question from each board director. They're asking the same exact question of each interviewee, and then you'll have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Do you have any questions before we get started?
Thinking good?
Okay, please proceed.
Well, good afternoon, Board of Education directors, Superintendent Kane, staff members, teachers, and those here in the audience and online. My name is Jason Page, and I've lived in Highlands Ranch since 2014. And it is on the advice and encouragement of my family and trusted friends, both old and new, that I sit before you, as a nominee for the open board seat in District C. As a parent of a newly crowned middle schooler here in Douglas County, the state of education in our district is certainly a priority for me. Through my volunteer work as a classroom volunteer, coach, STEM committee member, district long-range planning committee member, and charter school board member, I've become more and more passionate about the quality of education our children receive. Between DCSD and Ben Franklin Academy, I've attended or taken part in over 30 board meetings, 3 board retreats, 60 hours of board training, and over 70 committee meetings of various flavors, from STEM committee to school accountability and district long-range planning. I've scrutinized budgets, personally handed out Christmas bonuses to teachers, reviewed and revised policies, completed performance reviews, helped steer school district boundary discussions, helped lead the school through the COVID pandemic, and taken hard questions, hateful comments, and notes of thanks from both parents and teachers. I humbly believe my experience within the district over the past several years has prepared me to make both a meaningful and immediate contribution as a member of the board, especially under these circumstances. Being an effective board member requires collaboration and ultimately the ability to make decisions that ensure our tax dollars are used effectively and efficiently in the best interest of the district, inclusive of students, teachers, staff, and parents. In my professional life, my actual job title is Global Lead for Problem Management. I have learned how important it is to get to the root cause of issues and the key role diplomatic communication plays in dealing with disparate groups having to come together to solve these issues. In the case of DCSD, this diplomacy must happen between parents, teachers, administrators, and the board. I'm not here for political grandstanding, and I am certainly not here for the extravagant pay and fringe benefits the board offers. I am here because there's much work to be done, and I'm willing to take on the responsibility and the duty to get it done. For my daughter, her fellow students, the teachers, the staff, and the parents. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Director Meek.
Hi, Mr. Page. Thanks for being here today and for your interest in serving on the board. So what does excellence in board governance mean to you, and how would your addition to our governance team advance our work?
I think there are, a few priorities that, the board should have. I think it all starts with having a vision for what the school district should be, and then from that driving towards goals in a more practical sense. And then what that looks like is from vision to goals to policy to financial matters in terms of allocating resources, and ultimately having those all point toward, when you say excellence, is setting a standard. And so for me, that's academic, and that should be the ultimate and first goal, is academic excellence. And so are we graduating students that can be productive members of society, are critical thinkers, and be able to attack with fervor any pathway that they desire, whether that be college or a career or anything like that.
Director Myers.
Hello, Mr. Page. I wonder if you could tell me what you think are the top needs of the Douglas County School District.
So I think first and foremost, we have to deal with the budget. And as plainly stated in several different media outlets and even from Superintendent Kane, we have the need to fund our teachers in a manner that's competitive with the other districts around us. So I think that's probably priority number one, is to ensure that we attract and then keep the best teachers that we can.
Okay, thank you. The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, "to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential," end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
I would say in a positive sense, I've enjoyed the monotony and the relative boringness of school board meetings of late, that we're doing the work and separating the wheat from the chaff, to use that analogy, when it comes to what are the actual priorities for the school district. So I really appreciate that and the candor of which you all have spoken. So I think that's what we're doing right. What can we do better? I think continued open communication between, members of the board to parents, board to superintendent, that we're just very transparent in how we're operating and what we're doing. That can always be better.
Director Ray.
Mr. Page, good afternoon. Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or that you've attended. What were the topics you felt strongly about, and based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
It was just a few months ago, I believe, the April meeting, I was in attendance, and we had several students speak specifically around their experiences with bullying in particular. I am 100% a no-nonsense person when it comes to bullying. There is no need for it, and I think there should be swift and direct consequences for engaging in that. I think that's something we can all rally around, and I think that as a board you have, and I appreciate that regardless of where you fall on your own personal matters and in your own personal opinions, that those things that just are very clear right and wrong need to be addressed and addressed swiftly. So I think that that's issues like that we can all come together and really make a decisive decision on, because there's no need for stuff like that in the school. So that really impacted me to hear of students having to deal with that in the district, and I would not tolerate that.
Director Williams.
Hi there, thanks for being here. So I have a little bit more of a specific question. So if you could give me a time where you have had to deal with people with differing opinions and how you dealt with that.
Well, I also was on a school board during COVID. That could actually just could be my answer right there, is that I've dealt with people with very different opinions. So there is definite delineation with when there were times where I spoke out as a dad. Always made that clear that I'm speaking as a dad, and this is my own personal opinion. But then when it came to being a board member, I don't speak for the board. The board speaks through our president, and when we make a decision, regardless of how we voted, but if that's the majority decision, then we back that up. So we have lively discussion, but ultimately, we spoke as a board. I addressed personal attacks personally with that person offline, which I had several of those. But always when it came to matters of the board, we act upfront as a unified front, and try to maintain that professional decorum even when it was really difficult to.
Director Weiniger.
Good afternoon, Jason. As a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts on an MLO and bond being on the ballot again this year?
My thoughts are that we should do it, but we need to do a better job of explaining why we should do it. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Page, and you now have 2 minutes for any closing remarks.
Thank you all once again for your time on taking this process underway, and definitely under extraordinary circumstances. I believe the work and the many long hours I've put into serving the educational community in Douglas County have prepared me well for serving on the DCSD Board of Education. I have a strong awareness of the current challenges and the ones ahead, and I'm prepared to dive in and make a positive impact as a part of this board on day one. The core of Douglas County School District has been and absolutely needs to continue to be academic excellence. If we anchor ourselves to that foundation, all of the decisions will come into better focus. Academic excellence happens in safe and healthy environments. Academic excellence happens with well-compensated and motivated teachers. Academic excellence happens in learning from our failures, not being sheltered from them. And academic excellence happens when parents are an equal part of the process and not an afterthought. I would rather be tired of doing the work that needs to be done in order to make and keep academic excellence at the core of what the district stands for than be tired by complaining about the state of our schools without any action on my part to bring forth creative and innovative ideas and solutions. I look forward to further discussions about how we can continue to make Douglas County schools the best they can be. Thank you for the opportunity to state my case for consideration of occupying the vacant board seat. And if you deem me worthy of stepping into the role, it would be my humble honor and privilege to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page, and you're welcome to either stay with our studio audience here or depart as you see fit. Hello, Mr. Almer, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Good. Just like every other candidate, you'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement. You'll then get one question from each board director, about 2 minutes roughly to answer. You're going to get the same questions that every other interviewee has had, and then you'll have 2 minutes at the end for closing remarks. Do you have any questions before you start?
No, sir.
Okay, then please proceed.
So I don't have any formal opening remarks. I would say that I'm generally unfamiliar with the process of the school board and, everything that it is that you guys do. I understand that it's, the purpose is to provide an educational forum for our children and to make our children the best that they can be. So I'm not really sure about the political affiliations or really any of the other details that are going into it. So let's jump into the questions and see how I do on those.
Absolutely. Director Meek.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for being here and for your interest in the position. So how would you describe excellence in board governance? And how would your addition to our governance team help us move in that area?
Well, I think that excellence would be the pursuit of your purpose, or our purpose, if I were to be also on the board, which is, again, to make our children as strong as they can be, to educate them, to provide foundational issues for them, to try to separate some of the other issues that are, constantly, being bombarded on our children, allowing parents to be parents, and then providing a forum for the children to learn and to grow and to mature and to become good young Americans. Sure, thank you.
Director Myers.
Good afternoon. I'm wondering if you could tell us what your top needs that you think our Douglas County School District needs.
Oh.
How did that go?
I have to, that's okay. Do I have to pick one? No. It sounds to me, I believe, again, with what little I know about the general situation, it seems like budgeting is a major issue. Finding the money, and then once the money is actually received, applying it appropriately. Again, I know that one of the major topics is teacher pay. That's a pretty common conversation, I suppose, around the happy hour table or the dinner table. Another one that seems to be a pretty major issue are some operational issues as far as lower, the number of students dropping, and how we, as parents and as the board, would handle that and address that. So those are two of the main things that I see.
The mission of the Douglas County School District is, quote, "to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential," end quote. What is the board and district doing right to achieve this mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
Well, I'd like to start by saying I love that, because I didn't know that, and I used all three of the main points in my opening statement, so I like it. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. The mission is to provide an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential. What is the board doing right, the board and the district doing right to achieve the mission, and what are we doing that is detracting from this outcome?
Well, I'll start with the positives. I think that there seems to be more community involvement. There seems to be people care, and so as long as the board is listening to the community, to the constituency, I think that's what else can you do, and try to perform based on what the parents, and again, it is the parents. So I think that's a major positive. I like the activity there. I don't really usually like to focus on negatives, but some of the questions or the issues that have popped up with like controversial books, that's an issue, I suppose. I think maybe another issue would be an inability or an apparent, and again, I'm not completely educated or knowledgeable about this, but an apparent inability to find the funding or communicate properly with the community so that they vote the funding to you, whether it's, the mill levies or whatever, the tax situation might be. So I think that speaking as a parent and as one of the constituents, I would say that, one of the reasons that some of these mill levies haven't been passed is a lack of communication, a lack of understanding within the community of what, okay, we're going to allow this money to be, we're going to give you this money, basically, what are you going to do with it? And I don't think that there's a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of belief that the monies are used properly, that they're applied properly, so.
Thank you. Director Ray?
Mr. Holma, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Discuss a recent board meeting that you viewed or attended. What were the topics you felt strongly about? And based on your observations, how would you have added value to the decision-making process?
Well, so my wife watches all of the board meetings, but I recently spoke in my first one on the equity policy. I got up here and got my 1 minute. And I think that there seemed to be again, one of the reasons that I'm here is this kind of evolution of getting a parent evolution of moving away from focus on education and children and these foundational values, providing teacher support, administrative support, operational support, budgetary support, some of these things that seem to be pretty, pretty simple issues, and this focus on wrong things, on things that maybe I would consider to be static or external noise.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Director Williams?
Hello there. Thanks for being here. I have a specific question for you. Could you give me a specific time where you have had to deal with people who had differing opinions and how you dealt with that?
Well, that list is long. Let's see. A specific time when I've had differing opinions and how I handled it. Well, how about a board meeting? So, used to be on the board of an oil and gas company, and again, as you guys know, I mean, there's always differing opinions and different ways to achieve different goals and objectives. And boy, I don't know how. Okay, so specifically, the conversation was, do we use funds that we had, cash in the company, to go out and develop a new field, drilling, completing, producing a new field? Do we provide perhaps a dividend to our shareholders? Do we give bonuses to our staff, or raises? I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of being super specific, but I do think that maybe this is a good way to answer this. I generally see the world in statistics in a normally distributed curve, and you've got excess on, you get excessive to the right, you get excessive to the left, and there's usually most people have differing opinions, but they're within a relatively tight frame of being reasonable and logical, and people can have good discussions and have good debates and come to solid conclusions. And that's actually where I think that I excel in. It's maybe a talent. I don't know, that sounds a little arrogant, but it's really good at listening, seeing all of the different viewpoints, and then coming to a consensus that seems to work for everybody. I don't feel like I did a very good job of answering that question. All right, thank you.
Director Lineberry?
Thanks for being here today, Mark.
Thank you.
As a board, we have had recent discussions around putting another funding initiative on the ballot this November. What are your thoughts on an MLO and bond being on the ballot again this year?
Well, again, without actual knowledge, it does feel like the district is underfunded. So we need more funds. And so it seems to be a natural solution to vote on it again and to keep voting on it until you get the funds. I mean, this goes back to an earlier answer I gave, though, which is, I think that it's ineffective to just keep putting, the bond, putting the issue on the ballots again and again and again without, and again, I'm not saying I have the answer right here, but the way that it's been done in the past seems ineffective to me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you now have 2 minutes for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
I will end with, I feel like I'm a blank slate. Again, I have a lot of industry experience in operations, budgeting, dispute resolution, actually. I think you guys probably all read my resume and my letter of interest. And it seems to me, again, I keep saying it seems to me, from my perspective, it feels like there's a lot of politics, a lot more politics than I thought was involved in this process than should be. And I think maybe it'd be a very big positive to have a fresh, non-political perspective and approach to this. So that's what you'll get if you choose me to be the board member. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Almer. And
Thank
like
you.
all other interviewees, you are welcome to either stay or you may depart, although we are complete with our interviews. And for all those listening at home and our interviewees, the district board shall determine via our resolution no more than 3 finalists to be considered to fill the vacant board position. That selection will occur at the next board meeting, which will start at 5 o'clock. And the selection will be after the public comment section. So we'll go through the beginning part of the board meeting. We'll go through public comment. We'll have some things, consent agenda, some other items, and then we will get to the actual nomination of finalists by the board and vote on 3 finalists tonight. The 1, 2, or 3 finalists selected by the board will be invited back on the 27th, 1 week from today. We anticipate that starting at roughly 5 p.m. We will go through another round of finalist interviews. We will make a final selection at that meeting and have a swearing in that evening. So we do appreciate all the interviews today, Mr. Burmeister, DiCarlo, Geiger, Howard, Ms. Lineberry, Mr. Page, and Mr. Almer for spending this last bit of time with us. With that, do any other board members have any statements to the candidates? Okay, with that, we will move, you're excused, Mr. Almer, and we will move to item number 5, which is adjournment of the special meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Williams,
Second.
second by Myers. I will now take the roll. Meek?
Aye. Aye.
Myers?
Aye.
Peterson, aye. Ray?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Weininger?
Aye.
Passed by a vote of 6-0. The special meeting of the Board of Education is hereby adjourned.